What's up guys, I'm Dave Klein. Today we're going to talk about the lore behind the Crown of the Iron King DLC. But before I get started, I'm going to recommend watching my old Iron King lore video, as I believe most of the info in that video stands up and it more heavily explores who the old Iron King was. The new lore features several new revelations and elements, so I'll address each separately to help keep everything organized. For every ruler, there's a tale behind their rise to power, be it by birth or through darker means. During the time of the Kingdoms of Alken Venn, a lord was born, an ambitious lord who strove for power. An opportunity came when Sir Alone, a warrior from an eastern land, chose to serve this little-known and unestablished lord who he helped become the Old Iron King. It was via this particular night the Old Iron King was able to wrest this dilapidated region from the Kingdom of Venn, the act requiring all the resources the enfeebled lord could muster. Now at this point, bear in mind the region he took from Venn was already in a state of disrepair and ruin, so perhaps a hollow victory. Yet, along the lines, he discovered the iron-producing miracle and was reborn as a powerful leader. It was through the use of this iron the king became so powerful. He latched onto it, he let it become who he was, and eventually, he let it consume him. With the ability to produce iron, he created numerous forges, and the Broom Tower used to produce a seemingly endless supply of iron. The king used it to create iron soldiers in an iron castle. Legend has it he even tried his hands at forging a dragon out of iron. In fact, there seem to be many parallels between the Old Iron King and King Vendrick, whereas Vendrick created golems and used his golems to create a castle. It was during the peak of the Old Iron King's reign that Sir Alone, now the king's most trusted knight, would eventually leave and set out again in search of lands yet unknown. The Old Iron King chose to honor Sir Alone's name, for when Sir Alone departed, the Old Iron King bequeathed Sir Alone's name to his Iron Warriors. As the Iron King arose to power, so too did his numerous subjects, and one in particular, a certain Magus, stood out. The Magus Agil was a loyal follower of the Old Iron King, and sought to grant fire a will of its own. His influence was so grand that a giant monument was erected in the Iron Keep, Agil's idol. While this idol could have been built as a gift to the Magus Agil by the Iron King, it's likely it was instead a gift from Agil to the Iron King, as the idol is in the shape of a bull, representing the king, and was probably meant to worship the powerful king. Regardless, this idol remains standing in the present, showing just the amount of excess the Iron King lived by, and a clue into what would lead to his eventual downfall. The king sunk below the scorching iron, met the one whose name must never be repeated, and became Icarus Earth. But these were events of long ago, and today, no one even remembers the king's name. I believe after the Smelter Demons struck down the Iron King, this was when he acquired Gwyn's soul, and what would transform him into Icarus Earth, the form we find him in during his boss encounter. After the downfall of the Iron King, the land came into the possession of another powerful soul. When Natalya came to this land, the king she sought was no longer there. Dispirited, she forsook her own soul and clung to the heirlooms of this old king. Natalya, the Bride of Ash, came searching for the Iron King only to find fire, lava, and ashes. While it's not entirely clear, it seems possible that Mitha, the baneful queen, was indeed married to the Iron King. The queen sought the king's affection, even poisoning herself to attain beauty, despite the monstrous consequences, all for the compelling madness known as love.
That creature, she was human once, you know? Yeah. In fact, she was wed to the prince of that nearby castle. But her husband? He had feelings for another. That damned hag just can't let her old flame go. She's going to get us all burned.
If it was indeed the Iron King who Mitha was queen to, perhaps the one he actually had eyes for was Natalya. Regardless of if Natalya was betrothed to the Iron King or merely sought him out, she indeed became a bride to the ashes that remained. Natalya, like Nashandra and Alana, was yet another shard of Manus, father of the Abyss. The Child of Dark, bearing inconceivable strength, found herself in a kingless land devoid of souls, and in journeying there has all but condemned herself to a fate most wretched. This augur of solitude transformed herself into numerous ashen idols, splitting apart her soul and, renouncing her flesh, wandering Broom Tower. In the act of dancing, the Bride of Ash was transfigured as smoke, enticing people to her residence, and so her seat of power came to be known as the Broom Tower. As Natalya came to power, scores of men were dispatched to this land to tap their replete stores of iron, but they soon lost their nerve when faced with the Child of Dark, and all but the most steadfast of them became servants of the Black Fog. Natalya had a way of controlling men, and it seems those who didn't join her met with her wrath. Her most powerful ally was one who would come later, a servant of King Vendrick's time and an outcast, Raime, the Fume Knight. Raime and Velstadt were known as the left and right arms of the king, until their wills clashed and Raime was deemed a traitor. The rebel Raime, after his defeat at the hands of Velstadt, came to Broom Tower in search of greater strength. It came not from a regal father figure like before, but from a newfound mother who gave him true purpose. Raime became infatuated with this Bride of Ash, and settled in this land of smoke and fog, reborn again as a stalwart warrior. Falling for Natalya's temptations, Raime became her sworn protector, doing anything to stop those who would threaten his love. Yet, even through his devotion, guarding Natalya with his life, Natalya can be found with the crown of the Iron King, and it would seem never forgetting for whom she came. You may have noticed that some of the things I discussed have contradicted a few theories I've presented in other lore videos. I'll be the first to admit that I can get things wrong, and that's why I always highly recommend watching other lore videos so you can determine your own opinion on what happened in this whole series. In my Crown of the Sunken King DLC video, I suggested it was possible the knight Alana summoned to aid her in battle could have been Raime, as we didn't know his appearance. Well, with the revelation in the Iron King DLC of who Raime is, I think we can debunk that possibility and say it is indeed a form of Velstadt Alana is summoning. In my Prince and Princess of Alken Venn video, I suggest the Iron King may be the Prince of Alken. I also thought the land in which he ruled over was Alken, but we find out in this DLC the land he's taken was from Venn, so I think it's safe to say this theory was off as well. Additionally, it's safe to say he wasn't the one to found the two kingdoms. Finally, something that's still unclear but worth mentioning is in the Broom Tower. After fighting the Blue Smelter Demon, we can find the Ferris Mask, a mask depicting Ferris's contraption. Tears flow from the eyes of this mask, drenching its wearer. The majority of Ferris's creations are perplexing to reasoned men, and this mask is not an exception. In my Rotten lore video, I suggest it's possible the Rotten is Ferris given various evidence we had at the time. With the new revelations from the various DLC, I think we can question this. It's possible the body we find the Ferris mask off of is, in fact, Ferris. Although there's really nothing to point to this, and it's also just as likely someone happened upon his mask. Another theory that's been brought up is that the Rotten is, in fact, the Sunken King. This I'm not too sure of, as Jorg is stated to have killed the Sunken King, but I still think it's worth mentioning. Finally, I want to end with the speculation that was shown to me by the Spectral Force from a GameFaqs post by user dndgravemindnat. It's some really great speculation that I wanted to share with everyone and help make a little more widespread, so props and credit go to them. This theory presents that Haid could have been one of the Kingdoms of Alken Venn, at least at some point, and there's a lot of interesting evidence to back this up. First, let's take a look at the architecture. The entrance of the Blue Cathedral has the exact same design as a part of the Iron Keep. Then, there's the broken door in Haid's sewer, which happens to match up with the entrance to the Iron Keep. And finally, there's the towers and spires, which have the exact same architecture. Beyond the similarities in the architecture lies even more compelling evidence and similarities. The Iron Keep, with a theme of red, eventually sunk into a bed of lava. Additionally, the Brotherhood of Blood can be found along the way to the Iron Keep. Meanwhile, Haid, which is known for its Cathedral of Blue, and the Blue Sentinels, sunk into a bed of water. The Brotherhood of Blood and the Blue Sentinels are rivals, similar to how Alken and Venn were known to be rivals. Yet another theory dndgravemindnat goes into is that the revolving rotunda in Majula allows access to only one of these areas at a time, either the Undead Cops, the Brotherhood of Blood, and the Iron Keep, or Haid the Blue Sentinels in the Lost Bastille. Perhaps this rotunda was built to separate the two kingdoms of Alken and Venn, as they were known to be rivals. I'll leave a link in the description for anyone who wants to fully read this theory, and I highly recommend it as it's a great read. Alright guys, that wraps up this lore on the Crown of the Iron King DLC. I hope you enjoyed, and you'll have to let me know what you think of this new idea behind Alken and Venn, as I think it's the most interesting one I've seen yet. Also, if you haven't yet, check out my new Super Show. I put a huge amount of work into them and think they're a fun watch. Alright, I'll see you guys next time. Peace. It's a full moon out, and you know what that makes me think of? The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask. Now don't get me wrong, choosing my favorite Zelda game is like choosing my favorite amongst a barrel of puppies. I want that one.